So like many industries, COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated the biopharmaceutical industry's evolution towards a new business model for customer engagement. In March 2020, we all had to figure out how to replace millions of face-to-face interactions between sales reps and HCPs with digital engagements. However, finding the balance between the digital and human interaction has become more important today than at any point in the history of this industry. While this evolution is ongoing, it is clear that all companies are looking to find a blended model of digital, remote, and in-person engagement. One thing that we should all keep at the focus of our agenda is that we have to solve this problem not just for us, but for the patients who are the end beneficiaries of what we do, and with the right level of empathy. To discuss this topic, I have the pleasure of having industry's 5 top leaders with me today. Let me start by inviting and introducing my esteemed panelists. Tina Zhu, she is Head of Digital and VP of Commercial Innovation for AstraZeneca China. We have Sanjeev Navangul, who is the Managing Director and CEO of Bharat Serums and Vaccines. We have Anant Velaya, Head of Japan's Oncology Business Unit for GSK. We have Priyanka Agarwal, Managing Director and Partner for Boston Consulting Group India. And we have Rorik van Village, the Omnichannel Capability Lead for BMS Switzerland. A very warm welcome to all of you. With that, we'll kick off our panel today. And my first question is going to be to Sanjeev. Sanjeev, first of all, welcome.
Thank you.
So my first question to you, what are the different ways that the global COVID-19 pandemic has transformed the pharma companies' digital strategies?
I think that's a very, very wide question to answer, but let me make it very specific to what really is happening to companies in terms of customer engagement. I think more importantly, what is happening is the acceleration of using technology at the front end was something that pharmaceutical industry was always a laggard, and compared to many other industries. While as much as the pharmaceutical industry was probably the leader at the back end and at the R&D, I don't think any industry was as advanced as them there. But on the front end, they were laggards. So that itself, that leap of faith to move on has happened. So that's probably the first thing. Second is, normally behavioral changes in organizations happen through behavior models. And the belief at the senior levels have gone up that this is something that we need to adopt in terms of technology adoption has to be at the forefront. And therefore, it is sinking in better throughout the organization. Thirdly, probably the definition of customer. I think for us, probably the only way we used to deal with this industry was the industry speaks to the doctor. And that's it. This probable situation has enabled us to understand that the ecosystem doesn't stop there. And we cannot just, the ability to make a difference by share of voice is over. And the ability to create more share of mind compared to share of voice clearly is now possible if you use mediums properly. And why I don't say it's a digital strategy is because digital again is a medium, and we should not confuse it to be a strategy. Right. Ultimately, your strategy is what it is. You're using a particular medium to achieve your strategy. So that interface, that digital allows you to make it better, is an understanding that is coming through. And therefore, the whole engagement of the ecosystem from the company, the doctor, the patient, the other ecosystem providers, so any provider such as even a diagnostic company, you can get people together very easily to resolve, discuss, or find a way to make a patient's life either better or longer. So that has dramatically changed. Also, people are realizing that they are able to reach out to their touch points at a time convenient for everyone. It is no longer time dependent in terms of you had to work for X hours and you have to find a way to reach out. This is becoming more and more beneficial in terms of reaching out to your touch points at actually making it more beneficial for everyone. Yeah. The other thing is what digital is enabling is that dissemination of information is becoming instantaneous. and you don't have to wait long to create situations. Or, example is that you find something happening wrong in the marketplace, and a rep used to talk to a doctor, then they used to write out a form, goes to medical department, then somebody analyzes, somebody calls a doctor. These all things are going away. This is becoming far more quicker, and people are able to reach out, information is able to be sent very quickly. Also, there are many things that we used to do which are not necessary have stopped. One of the biggest things that has stopped with digitalization is the fact that pharmaceutical companies no longer have to be either caterers or air ticket bookers. So I think this thing has already gone out. So I'm making it very crude, but I think this is something which is really beneficial for people to concentrate on work. Yeah, they are able to then concentrate on what is more important. And clearly, this medium is making people understand that we are a knowledge industry, and only if you are a knowledge industry we will be able to transform. So I've given you a whole lot of things that are changing in the industry, but the biggest factor is the behavioral change. There is serious behavioral change that is happening. So I'm not trying to get into all the details of it because we have many people here who are experts. So I want to stop here, but really this is something which is welcome.
No, Sanjeev, I think you make it sound very easy, the way you are doing this. But the change has been tough on some people, and I love the fact that you have concentrated and focused on some very positive aspects of what the pharma industry is doing to make this transition better. And your idea about this whole knowledge dissemination, I think it's going to help a lot of people. So thank you for those thoughts. We'll pick up on some of those as we kind of go into the session. But let me quickly move to Tina, you, and ask you a question. During the course of this pandemic, I'm sure you must have seen some or got some very interesting insights that have, from the organization standpoint, from the customer standpoint, on how are the customers reacting to this remote channels, and specifically in China. Would love to hear your thoughts on those.
Yeah, I thank for this question. Actually, I know from the pandemic, how to say, step by step, we could see from timing perspective, China is is getting the timing in the first stage, get into different of the mood. So we all know that actually at the end of January, actually early of the February, we start to see the online doctor behavior become a change, especially at the beginning of the February. So everybody knows that WeChat is a quite important channel for the digital to engage the customer. At the beginning, we find out the behavior for the doctor to learn the academic content. Actually, the peak time is 7 p.m. at night, which is we can easily understand. So when the doctor return from home and return from work back to the home, and after dinner they start to search for some of the content they could learn by themselves. But during the pandemic, we observed the big time actually moved to 7 p.m. around the afternoon. So we after the reality check, we understand actually at that time the hospital traffic has reduced significantly during the daytime. And in the morning, definitely there were a lot of hospital activity to do, but a doctor are more moved to the afternoon during the work time. They start to learn and understand the situation. So that lead our digital daily publishing time from night to the afternoon. So which is can better use of the doctor time to learn the academic content. Secondly, we find out that actually the remote detailing become very important channel to engage customer during that time. And this is not only the channel importance, but also the content is super important. We find out with the academic, with the pandemic emotion changed, the content or the whole topic actually changed as well. At the first 1 or 2 weeks, actually the most hot topic is general, related with the pandemic, and where is the source, and where is the most peak location. But later on, and the doctors start to link the pandemic, the COVID-19, with their particular disease area. For example, especially for the asthma patient, and the doctor try to understand how the asthma patient already has the disease and how they can protect them during the during the pandemic season, and so they can help their patient to pass this particular period of time. And later on, when it start become the more open area for the work, and the doctors start to see how they can help the patient find the more safe place back to the hospital to do their regular check and to have a longer prescription period of time. So we start to see week by week the topic change. And also for the remote detailing, our sales rep has the how to find out the doctor online behavior, which is what topic they like and dislike, and how they can customize the content for their the doctor. Actually, it's quite interesting data. So during every month during our pandemic season, every month we find out we launch more than 500,000 times our sales rep reach to their customer. And in order to figure out the best time and also the content and the motion, and we have the experience to can achieve the content open rate beyond 30%. So it's quite good progress when we more understand of the online behavior. And also we find out the online, the usage of the online meeting is not only for the small regular poking meeting for the doctor within across the hospital to have some topic discussing. We also find out actually some of the national top academic conference are also transferred to the online format, because it is also the important momentum for the pharmaceutical company for the new product launch. We have experience of the new product launch all go through the online version. For example, our product infancy launch, we organize of more than 80 top academic leader from 75 countries as the speaker joined online. Definitely it is a quite complex of the mix, but it is like other, the cell phone, smartphone launch, online launch meeting. It is also can organize the pharmaceutical companies online new product launch. So it is the quite, accelerate the whole industry get into the digital world.
Great. No, absolutely. And, we have had to unlearn and relearn so many things during this pandemic, but two things are very clear. The quality and the kind of content that the industry is now generating has seen a step change in last 6 months, which probably would have taken much longer had we not gone through the situation. And second, I loved your thought around digital launches, right? I mean, this, Indegene has been doing this for quite a while. And the whole idea of understanding a physician's digital journey and helping them, helping the pharmaceutical company do that launch digitally, I think that idea in itself is extremely powerful, and the acceptance has suddenly accelerated, as you rightly pointed out, not just China, but everywhere now. So thank you for sharing those thoughts. Very, very, very helpful. With that, let me move to your neighbor in Tokyo, Anand. You lead a very complex portfolio. Oncology is seeing the kind of change that we have not seen in a very, very long time. We are moving towards precision medicine, and so many innovations are coming up in that space. So let me ask you, how do you set up the digital ecosystem to support a very personalized customer experience?
Thanks for your question, Marut. Indeed, the customer engagement dynamics are changing very rapidly in the pharmaceutical industry. And at the center of this is the behavioral change that Sanjeev highlighted earlier in the talk. But I wanted to add some more color to that. Take, for instance, the oncology space, where the importance and value of precision medicine is playing out as we speak right? And it started with the scientific advancement in the development of targeted therapies, followed by a second revolution in the immuno-oncology space. And we are now beginning to see more advancement in cell and gene therapy, right? So there's a lot of advancement taking place in biology. And now more and more oncology drugs are being introduced to treat with precision a subpopulation of patients and deliver enhanced efficacy and safety outcomes. This revolution has brought to the forefront the importance of specialists who are experts in treating certain types of cancers within an increasingly fragmented customer base, right? That's very important to recognize. And these customers are collaborating with many other healthcare practitioners in a multidisciplinary team setting to deliver cutting-edge personalized treatment to each of their patients, right? So setting up the digital ecosystem begins with the recognition that each of these customers have a unique set of needs and aspirations, right? And they are desperately looking for information through through their channels of preference, right? To treat the patient that is at hand. And building the digital ecosystem involves building a vision, a strategy, an operating model, the right infrastructure, and culture. These are the 5 buzzwords, right? So it starts at the top with the creation and communication of a compelling vision to establish a unique and differentiated experience that brings value add and satisfaction to each customer out there. To inform the strategy, clearly one has to understand the customer and patient journey, as you mentioned, and one has to do that very well. The traditional strategic approaches of segmentation targeting may not be very helpful because one must be bold enough to embrace the concept of micro-segmentation and micro-targeting, right? We're talking about many shades of segments of customers now. The ways of working together must be redefined to establish an operating model that enables cross-functional teamwork and partnership with other companies to enhance the understanding of the customer needs. And finally, from an infrastructure point of view, it is important to build a universal database within the organization that's able to store and connect cross-functional digitized data and adopt then tools to analyze this data to generate insights and predict behaviors of the customers, right? And finally, culture plays a key role as it can eat strategy for breakfast, right? So we can all come up with nice strategies, but if you don't have the right culture in place, God forbid what might happen. So bringing everyone, every employee along that journey, keeping customers and patients at center, and having the courage to engage in trial and error sort of experimentation and not being afraid of failures are, I think, the key elements of this journey and success in this journey. So what I just shared with you is not rocket science. I mean, to sum it up, in my view, there are 3 key enablers of digital ecosystem to support personalized customer experience. At the bottom, it's the data layer, data management. The second layer is the analytics and the insights generation capability. And the top layer is building a unique customer experience, and it starts with the mindset, the customer-focused mindset.
Great. No, Anand, you're right. It is probably not rocket science, but what you just described is the holy grail of what an organization is looking for when they're creating customer experience. I mean, right from a vision to culture. I mean, I love the 5 steps that you described, but honestly, I mean, and I don't know if you have found that relatively easy to do in your organizations, but the people we speak to, I think those are some of the most difficult things which you so succinctly kind of pointed out to do in today's environment. I mean, it's just while you're absolutely right, but at each of these steps there are multiple failures, and we all need to kind of watch out for that. And I would love to kind of explore that thought as we go ahead. But one piece that and I'll pick up from you, and maybe I'll ask Rorik that question, that in the industry, the customer models that we are creating and using the approach kind of that Anand described, how do we make sure that these are reactive? They quickly react to scenarios locally, globally, and then maintain the customer experience that we so want to create and cherish?
Yeah, thanks. And I think it's a great question. And I also want to bring a little bit in of what Anand just said. I think he really captured nicely that we're almost flipping the whole model, right? And we are really thinking about completely different customer engagement models than what we did in the past. And personally, I'm a big believer of, I would say, two fundamental customer engagement models. The first one I'd like to refer to as the more or less the office orchestrated model, and the other one the field orchestrated model. Let me go to the next level of detail to give a flavor of these different models. First of all, the office orchestrated model is heavily relying on integrated digital, but also sometimes still traditional channels. So I don't believe it's going to be a pure digital play. I still believe there's a lot of value to gain in traditional channels as well. But when we think about those channels in that office orchestrated model, it can be companies' own channels or third party. And in that model, marketing, medical, or market access can develop and launch those tailored customer journeys. To Anand's earlier point, it's almost like that micro segmentation that we are able to identify and then trigger those tailored customer journeys. And those journeys, I believe, should be based on a combination of segmentation, micro segmentation, adoption ladder, or customer value. And even in this office orchestrated model, I believe there is a very important role to play for our field force. Where relevant or value adding, the field or the remote field force can be pulled in. And for this, I would say the second model, the field orchestrated model, I think it's a combination of where sales, medical, and market access people can actually launch again these tailored customer journeys that are prepared by our office people, ideally co-created or created with input from the field. And again, within this field orchestrated model, or often referred to as rep orchestrated model, there also should be the option for the rep or for actually the customer saying, I still like to prefer more this office orchestrated model. If, for example, there are challenges from a rep perspective in access, or, and I think that's even more important, the customer actually prefers to have a more digital approach. Or whether digital would be much more impactful or more efficient to move a certain doctor across the adoption ladder. And I think coming back to the broader team, right, with COVID-19, I think we're almost forced, at least when I look internally, in the majority of our markets to really think about that office orchestrated model first. Well, at the same time, in reality, I believe that several markets already before COVID-19 experienced similar challenges when it comes to field resourcing or customer access. And just to close off, I think that last but not least, thinking customer first, and I think that's also something really that Anand already outlined before, I think is really important because what we're observing across markets and therapeutic areas, a really steadily growing base of our customers prefer this more office orchestrated model first. And it's the customer telling us where and how and when they want to have the field force to come in or not.
No, I think that's very helpful, Auric. In fact, when I think about what you said, the idea is not to break what we have. The idea is to augment it. And you rightly pointed out, you take the inputs from your customers, you take the inputs from your field reps, and then in the end, hopefully a beautiful blended model will emerge, which may be different for different countries and different companies. But in the end, I think we are all kind of chasing that balanced approach, which will help us get closer to our customers without necessarily having to break everything. And you're right, some countries and companies have already got there, and some of us will follow, right?
Yeah. And Marut, just to close off, I think to your question, I think it's really the role of global or regional teams to actually start facilitating those models, so that markets can just focus on the content and the execution, and global really plays a facilitator role. I think that's what will make the difference now and in the future.
Excellent. No, I think I completely agree. And maybe it segues very nicely into what I kind of had planned for Priyanka. We are all talking about this scaling up of digital X to 10X, and that seems to be the vision that we are all pushing towards. But when you really operationalize it, how do you think about the roadmap? What are the different areas of business and capabilities that we need to enable to make sure that this is not just successful, but also sustainable?
Yeah, thanks, Marut, for this question. And I've been listening to the comments from all the panelists, and I really relate to a lot of what's being said. I really believe that, digital has been there for a long time. Technologies have been there for a long time, which make a lot possible. But what COVID really did, I think, especially for the pharma industry, is move digital, incorporating digital into the commercial model and incorporating digital into the way they work from a nice to do to a must do. So partly there has always been opportunity in what can digital do in terms of bringing value. Now I think it also becomes almost a question of a threat. So, profit pools are at threat. The market is probably fundamentally getting reshaped. If I take an example of India, I think in the last 6 months, what has happened is perhaps what may not have happened for 5 or 10 years. We have new competitors in the market. We have online pharmacies, which now finally, I think, became a legitimate business model. We have big players announcing, a lot of investments. As Tina was saying earlier, the HCP behavior has fundamentally shifted. Whatever data we look at, different surveys, almost 70 to 80% of healthcare providers are now interacting with their patients online and will continue to do so, even in a post-COVID world. The consumers, the patients, their behavior is significantly changed. And there is increasing expectation and consumer kind of behavior in that patient behavior. But many when we help clients with these digital transformation journeys, many of these have been attempted. But if we look at the research, and we did a very recent research across, I think, more than 200 companies, only 20 to 30% of those digital transformations succeed. And that is where I come to the question of your roadmap. And what was our finding on the ingredients of either success or failure? And we found that there were at least 6 common factors which made the difference between a digital transformation being a failure or a success. And Anand, Sanjeev, different people, referred to many of those, but let me just recap it, to bring it together. I think the first one is a very bold vision. Anand referred to it. Are you clear about what you're trying to do? Is your strategy clear? But also supporting your strategy with very specific outcome goals. So, is my outcome goal that I really want to deliver my messages or the sales and marketing that I was doing previously in a very personalized way? Is that the specific outcome? Is my specific outcome that I really want to fundamentally make a difference to the patient outcomes? For example, if I'm operating in diabetes, which has always been the holy grail of trying to say that can I adopt a disease management approach than an episodic approach? So first of all is a clear, bold vision supported by specific outcomes on what am I trying to achieve. Second is leadership commitment. While a lot of companies have followed, the approach of 1,000 flowers bloom, a little experiment is going here, a little experiment is going there. But is it now supported with, absolute leadership commitment to this change? Because this journey is not easy. This journey is not easy to sustain. It is perhaps easy to start, but it is not easy to sustain. So that's the second part. The third, which Anand referred to, is a very robust technology architecture, which is modular, scalable, and allows for analytics. So, is your technology architecture which you're setting up, is it fully modular? Does it utilize some of the new ways of working in terms of APIs, microservices? The fourth, really, and which is the most important one, perhaps, is the human part of this. So we now use a concept, within BCG when we support clients is what we say is that you are about to undertake a bionic journey. It is not a digital journey. It is how technology can blend in very well with the human capabilities. And the model that you're transforming to is therefore bionic, which is the word which refers to saying that there is a seamless flow of concepts from engineering to biology. And we've used that analogy to say that the success only comes when technology very well blends with what the human capabilities we have, and how we can migrate it to that. The fifth one is ways of working, and Anand referred to it as well in the way he talked about culture. So is it fundamentally changing the ways of working? And then the other one that we obviously talk about is a huge amount of reskilling, and the agile ways of working. But the interesting thing is not that these 6 factors need to be in place. Maybe all of us have referred to it in many different ways. But what the research points to is saying that getting 1 or 2 of these factors right doesn't move the needle. When you get all 6 of these factors right is when you improve the odds of success from 20 to 30% to 80%. It is that, it is that significant. And therefore, the roadmap is about making a very deliberate commitment, and it requires both leadership commitment and investment to get all these 6 factors right. And that is where I think, a lot of work that we are, and our work is also accelerated. And a lot of the ways in which we support clients is to say, you need to get all these 6 building blocks in place. Of course, you need small experiments to sustain the momentum and the energy, but how can we help you in this digital transformation along all of these 6 factors? So maybe that's what I would say, Marut, and I'm love to invite reactions from everybody to say, does that resonate? In terms of you're all doing some kind of, I'm sure you're all on the path of some kind of digital transformation now as we speak.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to hear from everybody else, but listen, you having people like you makes the job of the moderator so easy, because you have not only kind of picked up everything that people have said, from what behavior changes are, what the cultural piece of it. But I specifically love your analogy of the bionic piece, right? I mean, we are in an industry where healthcare has to meet technology, and unless that happens, and unless both those capabilities are built into this transformational journey, the chances of success are remote. But listen, I think, like I said, you have really captured the essence of what all of us trying to say. I mean, I'm happy to hear from any one of the panelists if they have any reaction to what Priyanka said.
I think I had just one small reaction, and Priyanka, fantastic what you said. I think just that you realize in our industry, if you look at knowledge base was digitalized, look at devices, most of them digitalized, look at surgery, quite a bit technology driven. You look at manufacturing, hugely technology driven. You look at R&D, substantially technology driven. It's only the front end that was archaic.
Yes.
Yeah. So how these situations, therefore, the way Priyanka explained in the 6 parameters tells us why this will move and what should be done to move it.
Yeah, and I would just like to also add a comment that, when we talk about leadership commitment, I think that's really very important, and ensuring that all 6 factors come into play together. One of the key challenges that I continue to see in the pharma industry is that people are still sitting on the fence because they're not sure about the return on investment. I think there are questions around that. Of course, at the field level, the sales reps are concerned that they might lose their job, that eventually their job will become redundant. So I think there are concerns in the minds of the employees, and if a concerted effort at the top leadership level is not taking place, then the change initiative will just fail right from the beginning. So I think that it's really important to ensure the commitment comes from the CEO level and all the way down along each level.
Yeah. Although I must say, Anand, that I'm now seeing that happen, at least in the Indian market. I was seeing baby steps in the past and a bit tentative commitment as you may be, but I'm now seeing that at least a few companies, and hopefully those will be the ones that are able to really break away from the pack, are really committing to this change fully, and perhaps a little by force, like I said, but that's now happening.
Yeah, and also actually the situation in China is that we have a quite interesting joking is actually the key leadership or the key leader to drive the digital acceleration in the healthcare industry is now to the CEO. It's also now to the CDO. Actually, it's the COVID-19. Actually, the China actually is the highly digital penetration country in the daily life. So as a human being, doesn't matter it is the patient or it is the customer, as their daily life, the digital already be part of their life. But just because in the healthcare industry, people never have a chance to try in the digital world how this works. So that's why we see the healthcare and also the education are the last 2 industry get into the digital world, especially post COVID-19.
Right.
So I definitely see this is the, how to say, it is the time we look at digital as a new normal.
No, I think that's very, very relevant. And Tina, I think, maybe my next question is probably to you then. As we now move from more philosophically defining what we need to do, let's move a little bit into the practical side of it, right? So let me ask you, when you think about the opportunities where you can leverage digital strategies and develop this personalized customer experience, and maybe how do you also see the inherent challenges when you think about implementation these strategies on the ground, especially at scale?
Let's taking the opportunity as the beginning. As I mentioned about as a human being, the people in China in their daily life already experience the high penetration on the digital. So which is like people get used to use digital to find a taxi, to pay their daily payment. But when they move to the healthcare, it is all talking about the first trial and how the first trial experience look at how that look like for them. And definitely in the digital world, we start to see the A/B testing become quite more in the most of the e-commerce platform or digital platform. And for the healthcare industry, how we can produce the personalized content, and especially for the target customer, and based on their experience, based on their interest, and based on their academic progress. And I think that is quite important part, because the content is the key for the healthcare industry, and what type of the content we can provide to the customer. I think this is the opportunity, as well as the a challenge to the everyone. And I think the other biggest challenge is we mentioned about in healthcare industry, technology is already quite well used, but the patient related information are still fragmented. And we can see the biggest fragment actually is between hospital and home. So because in order to have quite a holistic of the patient digital experience, we need to see the digital experience within the hospital, especially during the treatment stage, and also post treatment, especially for the chronic disease. When they back to home, how the digital world look like, or digital experience look like for the patient at home. Actually, the home and the hospital linked together will become a quite holistic patient experience. That drive also the doctor, our customer digital experience also need to reach to the within the hospital and at home. So we can say it's the before hospital, during the hospital, and after the hospital at home. So this is how we can link different system information together, and also with the data privacy and protection. I think that is the super challenge for us, because the first step is only the pharmaceutical company to doctor. But I see the most important is how the pharmaceutical company together with doctor to serve the patient in the digital world. I think this is the next challenge for us. And probably the online and offline integrate of the internet hospital may be the one of the solution for the future. So I think that is something where I experienced, and maybe we can share the agenda with other countries. Thank you.
No, I think you're absolutely right. In fact, the boundary between the home and the hospital, especially in China, and you rightly pointed out with the internet hospitals, the boundary is blurring. So we have to find solutions which cut across these boundaries and help with the same kind of experience both for the patient and for the doctor. So those are some very good insights. And maybe another good way for me to segue and ask Rorik that, as we accelerate this whole digital customer engagement, and the pandemic situation pushing us to do that, what do you still see as the biggest challenge in this adoption?
The biggest challenge, that's an interesting one. And I'm just trying to think through all the feedback from the other panelists as well. I think culture is still the most important part for me. I think Priyanka, you nicely alluded to that as well. I really believe both on a global as well as on a market level, having that right culture is critical. And I believe it's 80% of the work. I think you can still have the best integrated set of capabilities, customer-centric processes, but if the right mindset is not there, I really believe that one will go back into their known ways of working. Even after this pandemic, I would say there's a likeliness that they fall back into the old habits. The remaining 20%, I believe, is a combination of ensuring the right technology processes are in place. But I almost see technology and some essential processes as a commodity these days. So going back to what's the most important part, I really believe that's the right culture. And that to me really is all about very clearly articulating from the top, why is this important? Why are we changing our ways of working? And equally important also is making sure that all our colleagues are really aware about the how and the what is expected differently from the field force now and in the future. But the same goes for our office staff, but also to really make sure that we are there to support them on the how. And again, I believe that global teams, regional teams with the remit like our team really have that obligation to facilitate that. And frankly, I believe it's a unique opportunity, as alluded to by Priyanka as well. I believe it's a unique opportunity for senior leadership to work with teams like ours to really step in and set, or sometimes even reset ambitions and really redefine their customer engagement vision. And just to quote some of our senior leadership, they really articulated COVID-19 as a perfect storm when it comes to customer engagement, and I truly believe in that as well.
No, I think that's phenomenal. And thanks to this perfect storm as you call it, I think all of us have kind of contributed towards building that blueprint of what a post-COVID customer engagement needs to look like. I mean, and we need to continue to build that. So, and Priyanka, you summarized it very nicely between you and Anant on what that blueprint is. But maybe let me ask you, where do you feel partnerships fit into this blueprint?
Yeah, good question, Maruth. And maybe I can talk from some of the recent experiences where we've been actually engaged with the pharma companies and helping them with this new commercial model. I think, the obvious answer to the partnerships when I spoke about the bionic concept, which is sort of the technology and the human, is in some of the more concrete technology or some of the more concrete getting the work done where those capabilities are not there within the organization to use partnerships for that. But to me, it's even more fundamental than that. It actually impacts even the human side of the bionic change that I spoke about. Because what partnerships do is bring fresh ideas, not just execute. What they also do, in a lot of my experiences is, bring this more agile way of working, which then rubs off internally and in the organization and starts to create that cycle, which needs to be there in today's world of a very agile, sprint-based way of working in creating, some of these propositions. So I feel like they play both the part of what is the more obvious. I have got a partner to deliver a certain set of tasks in my overall journey, whether it's technology, whether it's content, whether it's some other piece. But actually, the rub-off effect of that, of bringing a fresh perspective, from that new set of skills that you bring in with the partnership, them rubbing off their way of working on the organization, and ultimately, therefore, spurring forward the organization on that path of the human capability, the culture, the agile way of working, as well.
Yeah, and Priyanka, this as a life science industry, we are so measured in our approach. Like we plan everything, right? I mean, that's what the industry is really known for. We plan and replan and make sure that it's fail safe. But let me ask you, Sanjeev, now that this whole COVID has hit us, there's this pressure of doing everything yesterday. And companies like Indegene, we are actually on the receiving end of it, where everybody wants us to increase capacity, double up, triple up. in a very short fraction of time. So when you think about these capabilities that you need to succeed in the new world, what are the things that you feel you need to develop internally in your organization? And what are the parts that you feel outsourcing is a better route for?
Yeah, Marut, this is true. I think let's not even debate this. That what you say is that everybody wants it yesterday and quickly. The problem is how to design it. And I think in some of our discussions just before this panel, in some of the notes that we were exchanging, one of the questions I think around this was how an Amazon or a Google can scale up so quickly. Yeah, I only say one thing, that Google has failed miserably as a health trying to be a healthcare company. So this just shows that knowledge industry doesn't behave like other industries. So if we require a certain level of planning and if we require a certain level of depth in thinking, then in our industry, then we should understand that that is necessary. Then, it's not speed versus output, but or at the cost of output, but it should be output driven by speed. I think so. We have to be a little bit careful about it, and as we are doing with you, even Marut, I believe that we are trying to build a model which can have communication like what Netflix does, an interaction like a Facebook does, and a service provider like an Amazon does. And we are able to construct that on a technology platform now and think about doing it is basically because in our industry, we need a lot more stakeholders to solve a patient problem. And that we can get everybody together easily because of technology is becoming better and better. So my worry is that though we require speed and we require everything quickly, the speed has been concentrated on customer touch. While I think we should take a step back and think about speed in terms of building the grand design of trying to see what is particularly required to ensure that patient gets what he or she deserves. And that is where, because of the knowledge intensity of that issue and the touch points that are there, let us take the right time that is required. Let's not, I think we need not have that rat race just to be early in the game to do something which will fail. Because understand one thing, I always take this example is that vaccines are reliable and everybody accepted vaccines as a solution in the 20th century because they were safe. More than efficacy, the safety of vaccines was established well. We are dealing with life. So in healthcare, we have to establish our technology systems in such a way that people have faith that patients will get better. And for that, if certain amount of time is required, we should take that time. Obviously, what we are realizing is that because of technology, we are able to do it much quicker than what we would anticipate generally. Also, people are forced in a situation, like everybody is saying here, that they have no other choice but to solve it. So I would be a little bit careful of this speed story, but clearly I think the grand design that we can put together now is much more possible because there is amenability, there is possibility, and there is.
And this could not be more true than in the current context when everybody's kind of racing to get to that vaccine first. So I think your thought around let's get the design right, even if it takes a little bit longer, I think it cannot come at a better time. So thank you for sharing your thoughts. And my last question, Anand, to you, and it's great that we are circling back to where you started on the culture and the design. If we have to do this right, in the right intent, as Sanjeev pointed out, do you feel that our organizations are set up from a mindset standpoint, from a structure standpoint, to deliver this new and advanced digital capability? Do we need to change anything? Do we need to influence any stakeholders?
Yes, Marut, I personally believe, and I'm sure there won't be any debate because I feel that all the panelists believe that we do need to change both the organizational setup and mindset in our industry to fully embrace the digital capabilities and be the true enabler, right? And I think Sanjeev had alluded to this, right? That at the end of the day, this is all about behavioral changes that we are seeing in the customers, right? In the past, the pharma industry focused on the push model, right? It was all Salesforce centric. But now we have to do a blend of push and pull. And as Rorik had mentioned, it's all about orchestration. And I still believe that the sales reps will be at the center of this orchestra. They will be the conductor of the orchestra, but how do we enable and empower the sales reps to be able to become the best conductor, right? And be able to deliver the right information to the customers. So, speaking from my experience working in Japan for the last 3 years, although Japan is considered to be a digitally savvy country, people have been a bit slower to embrace digital capabilities versus the other countries, partly because of the culture and partly because the need was not well understood, right? So just to give you an example, even now, during the pandemic, some hospitals in Japan may still push for on-site data verification of clinical trials and the use of physical seals and stamps and paperwork instead of moving to remote solutions, right? So you can still see the customers themselves are struggling with the mindset change, right? So while the pandemic has clearly increased the sense of urgency, one challenge I still see is the gap in the digital capabilities within the organization and the heavy reliance on the face-to-face interactions that I just mentioned, right? So today's marketers are still quite traditional in their approach to building brand plans, and they focus mainly on Salesforce as the main channel of interaction with the healthcare practitioners. One way to address this gap is to establish a digital lead at the country level, at the senior leadership level, who can basically develop the strategy and work very closely with the business units to implement that strategy. We can then complement that effort by redefining roles and responsibilities of all the members in the cross-functional team and empowering the customer or commercial excellence team to build the right capabilities within the organization, right? Now, as far as the organizational mindset is concerned, I mentioned before that culture can eat strategy for breakfast, right? So we cannot take culture, easily, right? Believe it or not, there is still quite a bit of resistance and reluctance to embrace digital transformation at all levels. The marketers are not sure about the ROI of the digital strategy, as I mentioned. The sales reps feel their jobs are in jeopardy. So to address such concerns, it's important that the CEO of the company is personally involved and sends a clear message to the employees, which is then cascaded down frequently by the business unit leaders, marketing heads, sales heads, to motivate and influence everyone to adopt the digital capabilities, right? So, but there is always a tendency at times for the change initiatives to be reflected, deflected, or rejected by the middle layer, right, of the managers. So having change agents is so important because I've seen this playing out in Japan. We try to drive some change and the middle managers just reflect it, right? So I think it's very important, and I cannot emphasize enough the need for a robust change management and communication plan to address employee concerns and build momentum for the digital journey by identifying quick wins, communicating them in a timely manner, and this will help to motivate the employees, generate the excitement that's much needed, and bring them along the journey.
Well, that's very well said, Anant. And as we come to this end of this session, and I'm sure anybody who has listened through this would get a recipe to some extent of what to do when you're thinking about this journey. And to be honest with you, I won't even try to summarize what you guys have said. I think each of you have brought in very, very different perspective to this. From Sanjeev, like you said, you have to get the design right. Everything else can follow, but if you don't have the design right, you are destined to fail. To Anand, what you emphasized and re-emphasized, culture piece of it is super important. To what Rorik, you said, don't break everything. You still need the central orchestration. Your people still are important. Your organization still is important. To Tina, what you said, that there has to be that seamless integration between a hospital and a home and how people interact and how do you create that journey. And Priyanka, I probably can never get out this whole word bionic out of my head again, because it so very well summarizes what this industry is all about, this whole interaction of engineering side of it and the human side of it. So listen, it was great listening to all of your thoughts. If anybody has any last comments, we would love to take that before we end this. Great. Again, listen, thank you very much. I really, really appreciate the time that you have taken and love the insights from across the globe. And I'm sure the audience would really, really enjoy listening to this panel. thank you, everyone. I think it was a great discussion so far. And now it's time for taking some of the questions. And my God, I have a lot of them. So I think we'll be able to take a few of them. We have 15 minutes for this. Maybe I'll start with the first one. So the first one talks about the complexity of the changing product portfolios. And there is a lot of focus on specialty oriented drugs. So the question is, how do you set up the commercial ecosystem for launches that will be faster and more frequent? Anand, maybe if you can take a stab at this one.
Yeah, Maru, thank you so much for asking this question. Actually, I'm living this right now as we speak. I'm actually responsible for the build out of the oncology team, a high performing oncology team in Japan. And we have a launch which is just a year away, and maybe it can be accelerated because we got an important designation for our product, and the Japan health authorities are supporting us to bring it to the market fast. So my goal is to put together a high-performing oncology team from scratch and be able to launch the product next year. And it's a specialty care, it's a cancer drug that we are looking to bring into the market. So I'm actually, putting together a strategy, looking to hire people. And my goal is make sure that I get the right people, the right talent into the organization. That's very important, starting with marketing and medical product managers. And then, of course, the sales team and commercial excellence support is required to ensure a successful launch. We are looking to put together a launch plan. Following that, we will start developing an editorial plan that will focus on the contents and the materials we want to bring to the market for launching the product. And here I mentioned content because content is king. We have to make sure that we deliver value appropriate information and knowledge about our drug so that we can create its value proposition. And then, of course, the channels. We need to worry about the channels also. So I would say content is king and channel is the queen. We need to understand the customers. So from that perspective, we involve in the commercial excellence teams to start understanding the customers. But one challenge we face is that this is a new area for us. So we don't have well-established relationships with the physicians. And given the COVID-19 situation, which is still around us, it's going to be very challenging. So one of the most important things I will focus on is developing a very good website, which would be the center, I would say the channel at the center, which will allow us to start pulling in physicians, understanding that, and then potentially doing a launch through a webinar, as we are doing this program today. So, these are some of the elements that I'm looking at in terms of building the ecosystem as we move along to ensure an accelerated launch.
Great, Anand. I think you have lots and lots of work ahead of you today. My second question, and it's for you, Priyanka. You spoke about the adoption framework. You spoke about the overall framework, which is very critical to the change management process. So what are the critical paths to change habits and to drive culture adoption while we embark on this journey of digital?
Maru, that's a very important question and pretty much, at the heart of, for example, many of the digital transformations, and how do you really make sure that they don't stay as a flash in the pan, a digital use case here and there, but become embedded in the business processes, become embedded in the behavior change. Few learnings from some of the larger transformations that I've personally been part of. One is to break up the overall strategy or vision into near-term outcomes, which therefore can be owned not by the top management, but can be owned by a marketing head, can be owned by a BU head, or can be owned, for a therapeutic area head, and be able to create enough momentum towards realizing those small outcomes in a short time frame. Because the early successes are always one important part of seeing the proof of the pudding and then sustaining the momentum. So that is, at least one learning. The second also is that as many of these digital transformations happen, you definitely have to inject new talent, something that I had also just spoken about in terms of capabilities. But often enough, there is little understanding between the business teams and this new digital talent. and how do you help them appreciate each other's points of view by integrating them very closely into teams. For example, one of the digital transformations I'm currently running with a pharma company, we have created these squads which are fully cross-functional, and each squad is responsible for one module or one outcome in the overall journey. So the squad has people from the business, the squad has people from the digital team, which are bringing a fresh set of lens and a fresh set of capabilities, and it also has some external catalyzers, like where for example somebody like us would come in. So that's the other part of it, saying how do you appreciate, how do you help the business leaders and the digital teams see each other's lenses better and see what they can bring to the table better in a very real way, in a day-to-day way. And that's what partly also leads to more conviction and this behavior change. And the third is to not, while I said early successes is important, but also to make sure that you don't stop there. So once there is a win or a success, make sure that the momentum still sustains, so that that doesn't disappear, and the new way or the new phygital way or the new digital way becomes a part of the business process. And therefore, whatever you're designing, design it for sustainability, and see it through, until you need no external impetus to push it forward, and it really becomes embedded, in the business process. Those are perhaps, 2 or 3 of the learnings I'm just thinking about, and there are more, but certainly those 2 or 3 come to mind.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And, it's a great segue to my next question. So you spoke about teams working together. 2 teams that typically are at loggerheads with each other, and, whoever has written this question calls them the 2 wolves. It's marketing and compliance. And anybody who has been in a global organization knows that while they're trying to get to the same goal, there is a lot of conflict. And the question says that as marketing is shifting gears very rapidly by adopting customer experience to driven customer models and advanced digital channel, we don't see compliance and legal changing at that pace. So how do you solve this? Sanjeev, maybe as a CEO of a company that's actually driving this kind of a change, would love to get your insights on it.
I think this is a great question in a way, because this is practical. This is a practical issue. The misconception in the structure of the question is the fact that we want compliance and legal to run along with marketing in the behavioral change, which is by nature not possible, because legal and compliance actually come as an experience of practice that is happening. So it will always be a laggard in terms of understanding what things happen. So first we have to digest the fact that it will always be a laggard. That doesn't mean it should not come in at the front end, come early, that it's all fine. But we have to understand by behavior it will be a laggard. Now what do we need to do for it is that there are 2 important things that drive their behavior and therefore manage it better. Number 1 is the fact that putting what ultimately is the necessary outcome of the exercise of whether you use digital or whether you use any new medium, that reason for doing it is to provide a better customer experience, better patient outcomes. So if that is what we are driving at, then in every action we have to ask compliance and legal that question, that whatever you're saying, is it driving better patient outcomes? If it is not, then you need to think again.
Right.
The second challenge that they are going to face as we go along is the network, because the number of touch points are going dramatically increasing. Also look at simple things like cross-border. Imagine fair market value questions. Imagine cross-border rules. Imagine countries behaving differently on different things, understanding the law differently. So these challenges they will face. And it is for us to understand that these questions need to be taken into consideration at the beginning on the table, so that they also try and find a solution which is acceptable to everybody. I think where we tend to get caught up is that we try to bring in compliance and legal late in any change, while they are as much required, because their job is to protect the company and the people around. So if that is their job, then bring them early in so that they do their job effectively, but help you through a solution. But also, I think one important thing that we must not lose sight, as I said in the beginning, is the fact that never allow anything to overpower the ultimate objective of better patient outcomes. I think if you drive that hard in the company, that look, we are here not because we want to follow rules or we want to make a great campaign, but we are here because patients should do better. So these mediums are allowing us to do it better. So if that is the case, then let us all solve the problem properly. So that would be my practical advice in these circumstances.
Oh, I think
And
that makes
Marut,
sense.
if I may just add to that,
Please.
most of the people think compliance as a policeman, right? But as Sanjeev mentioned, they're actually the enabler of doing the business in the right way and to help meet patient needs, right? So as long as people have that right mindset, the organization will do a lot better in terms of achieving its goal.
Yeah.
No. Now, the image is strong. Compliance as a policeman. I think I'll remember for a long time. But maybe
Just one thing, I always say that a compliance officer standing before the signal is a better compliance officer than a compliance officer standing after.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So another important stakeholder is the reps themselves, right? And Rorik, maybe if you can help put show us a little bit more of direction on this. So the question is, when we look towards advancing the orchestrated engagement models, are our reps there yet to take input from other functions and execute on those insights?
Great question. Short answer, yes, definitely. Really, we've seen in a variety of markets a field force actually orchestrating or triggering micro journeys. And just to give you an example, right? Think about a rep, somebody in the field realizing that the healthcare professional is still unaware of the urgency to treat. Then the rep will actually be able to trigger a journey, trigger a campaign that is exactly tailored around that specific need or that specific objective for that customer. Also, we've really seen other suggestions being utilized in the field. Think about other insights from what is it that the doctor has been consuming on the branded website, which emails did he or she opened recently. And if you have these sort of data, it will give a good rep the insights for a meaningful face-to-face or virtual conversation. So are we there yet? No, I think still the big change also for the reps is there are different ways of working and the ability to actually act on more data and insights. But I've seen it happening across a majority of markets. So are we there yet? No, but is it possible? Yes. Is it happening? Yes. So I would say that's very promising at least.
Great. So listen, I have a bunch of other questions, but I'm going to take one last one. And maybe Rorik, you and Anand could together answer because both of you kind of mentioned this earlier. So it's about the dynamic content needs for the healthcare practitioner engagements. Right? So there is this new need for content every day. How well could your content operations and infrastructure cope up with this rapidly changing content needs? So maybe why don't we, Rorik, start with you, and then Anand, since you said content is the king, get some comments from you as well.
Let me take a first crack at that one. And I like the question, but I don't think it's necessarily an operational challenge. And I think also it's less of an infrastructure challenge. I think there are three big areas of challenges if you think about getting content faster and better to our customers. I think first of all is moving away from tactics or full campaign delivery by global or regional teams. It's more looking after modular content. And I think that is a very big change, especially if you start thinking about how can we co-create that with our key markets so it actually resonates. And that we also start to feeding other customer-facing functions. So I think that's the first one. I think secondly, and we also talked about the compliance part before as well, getting the right process in place to make sure that this type of modular or channel-agnostic content is approved in a timely fashion. And then I think the last component is the people component. And to me, that's the biggest one, because this is a huge change from our existing ways of working and how we've worked in the past. And I believe that if we solve for that, the infrastructure and especially the ability to capture data and leverage insights will automatically follow. But again, it touches on the people component, as we're not able yet to be this insightful and this customer-centric before. Again, this is going to be a very big change and a cultural shift for some teams or even broader organizations.
Absolutely. Anand, your comments.
Yeah, I would turn this around and look at it from a customer perspective. Why do we want content? We want content because our customers want relevant information at the right time. If we keep that in front and center of our mind, then we will never have an issue with developing the right content, right? So I think that's most important thing. And this will also help us address issues on e-consent, right? Most of the doctors see content being pushed to them, and that's why they're not interested in signing up, right, for websites or email blast emails. But if we ensure that we are building the right content and providing relevant content to them at the right time, they will very easily sign up for that and receive the content. So I think if we keep that in mind, there won't be any issues, in terms of bringing that value to the customers.
Great. Listen, as I said, I think there are tons of great questions more on the feed, but unfortunately, that's all the time we have. But let me thank you all for taking the time. I really appreciate it. Unfortunately, Tina could not join us for the Q&A, but the insights that all of you guys have brought, I'm sure they were super valuable to everybody who sat through this. Couldn't have asked for a better panel. Thank you very much and appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks, Marut. Thank you to the
Thank
audience
you.
for your questions. Bye-bye.
Yes.